Blinded by lust and arrogance, the billionaire walked out on his loyal wife, trading years of love for a woman with a perfect smile and a dangerous secret. He flaunted his new relationship, showering the side chick with luxury, while his wife quietly disappeared from the spotlight. What he didn't know was that the woman he chose was far more sinister than he imagined. Soon, whispers turned to headlines, and everything he built began to crumble. This is the story of betrayal, hidden darkness, and the twist that left the billionaire on his knees. What do you think happened next? Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The world saw Ethan and Grace Cole as the perfect couple. Magazines called them America's power duo. Every photo showed them smiling, hand in hand, the billionaire husband and his beautiful wife. They looked like the picture of success and happiness, but behind those smiles, their marriage was falling apart. Grace still remembered the early days when they had nothing. They shared one bowl of soup, one dream, and one old couch. She worked double shifts so Ethan could build his company from a tiny laptop. He used to tell her, "One day, I'll make you proud." And he did. He built an empire. But success changed him. He stopped coming home early. His phone was always silent and face down. He smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. When she asked if everything was all right, he rolled his eyes and said she was being paranoid. She tried to stay calm. She cooked his favorite meals, waited up at night, prayed for him. But he was slipping away like sand through her fingers. One night, she asked softly, "You didn't answer my calls last night." I was worried. He didn't even look up from his phone. "Not everything is about you." I was working. "I know, but you promised we'd have dinner together." He sighed, angry now. "You think my company runs on dinner dates? Grow up." Her heart cracked a little more that night. The Ethan she fell in love with used to hold her hand during storms. Now, she was the storm, and he wanted to be anywhere else. Then came the annual gala. Cameras flashed everywhere. Grace stood beside him, elegant and proud, her silver gown glowing under the lights. But Ethan wasn't looking at her. Across the room stood a woman he couldn't take his eyes off, Vanessa Blake. She was beautiful in a dangerous way. Her smile was sharp, her eyes calculating. When she caught him staring, she didn't blush or look away. She smiled like she already owned him. Later, while Grace was busy greeting guests, Vanessa found Ethan near the bar. She said he looked like a man surrounded by people but completely bored. That was all it took. Her words slipped under his skin like a secret he wanted to keep. She told him he deserved more excitement, more recognition, more life. Ethan believed her. That night, when Grace reached for his hand during the final toast, he moved just slightly out of her touch. Not enough for others to see, but enough for her to feel it. The space between them grew from inches to miles. After that night, Ethan began to change fast. He started dressing differently, staying out late, coming home at dawn. He looked at her with annoyance instead of affection. When she asked what was happening, he laughed coldly and said she was suffocating him. "You barely look at me anymore," she whispered, "because all you do is complain. Do you know how exhausting that is? I'm just trying to understand you." "Understand me? You can't even stand beside me anymore. You're still that small-town girl pretending to fit in a billionaire's world." She froze. "That small-town girl built your empire with you. Don't flatter yourself. You were just there, Grace. You didn't build anything." That night she cried until her body hurt. Ethan slept soundly in the guest room. Weeks passed. Ethan became cruel in ways that didn't even sound like him anymore. He mocked the way she spoke, her clothes, the way she still cooked instead of ordering in. He told her she was lucky he hadn't replaced her already. Grace started hearing whispers about a woman named Vanessa. She saw the name in gossip blogs, in business magazines, in comments online. But she didn't want to believe it, until the night she decided to surprise him. She baked his favorite lemon pie and drove to his office. The staff looked away when she entered. She asked to see him, and the secretary hesitated, saying he was in a meeting. Grace waited an hour, holding the pie in her lap. When the door finally opened, Ethan walked out with Vanessa, holding her hand. Grace stood there, frozen. Vanessa smiled sweetly, pretending to be polite. "Oh, you must be Grace. I've heard a lot about you." Ethan's face hardened. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to see you. You haven't come home in 3 days. And you thought showing up here would help? You're embarrassing me. I'm your wife. Not tonight, you're not." Everyone turned to stare. Grace put the pie down on the table and walked out without another word. When Ethan came home later that night, she was waiting in the living room, eyes red from crying. "How long has it been going on?" "Don't start. Her name is Vanessa. I saw her." "Then you know." "Why, Ethan? After everything we built, everything we went through, why her?" "Because she makes me feel alive." "You just make me feel guilty." "Guilty? For what? For loving you?" "For reminding me of who I used to be. I'm not that man anymore. I've evolved." "No," she said quietly. "You've rotted." His voice turned dark. "Watch your mouth. You live here because I allow it. I live here because this is my home. Not anymore." He took off his wedding ring and threw it on the table. "You're not the woman I married. You're weak, boring, always talking about love like it's some kind of magic trick. I need someone who understands power. Power won't keep you warm, Ethan. I have enough money to buy warmth." He walked away, leaving her shaking on the couch, the ring lying between them like a curse. 2 days later, she was called into a meeting. Ethan sat there with his lawyers, looking impatient. The lawyer slid a document toward her. Ethan said it was a divorce agreement. Her hands trembled. "You're throwing away 8 years like it meant nothing. It didn't make me rich. Vanessa did more for me in 6 months than you did in 8 years. Tears filled her eyes. "You think money replaces love? Love doesn't buy respect. Money does." He signed the papers in front of her. She hesitated. He leaned forward. "You either sign, or you leave with nothing." Her heart felt like it was bleeding, but she signed. Not for him. For her peace. When she returned home to pack her things, Vanessa was already there, standing in the hallway wearing one of Grace's silk robes. "You have good taste," Vanessa said with a smirk. "I'll take care of him now." "You won't. You'll destroy him." "Destroy? Maybe. But he won't see it coming." Grace walked past her without a word. Ethan stood by the door, arms crossed. His face showed no emotion. "I hope one day you realize what you've done." "I already have. I set myself free." She turned away. He didn't stop her. The heavy doors closed behind her, and for the first time, Ethan's mansion felt truly empty. Vanessa slipped her arms around his neck, her voice low and sweet. "She's gone. You finally have your new life." He smiled, proud, arrogant. "And it's going to be perfect." But deep down, something cold moved in his chest, a quiet warning he didn't understand yet. The world outside still saw Ethan Cole, the billionaire success story. But inside his mansion, behind his perfect smile, his story had already begun to rot, because pride blinds the heart, and what looks like an upgrade can be poison wrapped in gold. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children, and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? The headlines came first. Photos of Ethan Cole and Vanessa Blake smiling on the red carpet, holding hands, kissing under flashing cameras. The caption said things like, "The power couple of the year," and "Ethan Cole finds love again." Grace saw them all. Every magazine, every blog, every headline carried a piece of the man who used to be hers. She couldn't escape him, even when she tried. His name was everywhere. His happiness, his new life, his new queen. Vanessa had stepped into her place like she'd always belonged there. She wore Grace's jewelry, rode in her car, smiled from the same balcony where Grace once stood praying for her marriage to survive. Grace had moved into a small apartment on the west side of town. It was barely furnished, just a small couch, a bed, and a second-hand table. The walls were empty, quiet, cold. But she preferred that silence to the noise of Ethan's cruelty. She got a job at a small bookstore near the train station. The pay was little, but it gave her peace. She didn't tell anyone who she was. To the world, she was just Grace, no last name, no story. Sometimes she caught her reflection in the window and barely recognized herself. The woman looking back wasn't Mrs. Ethan Cole, the billionaire's wife. She was someone else, broken, tired, but breathing. Meanwhile, Ethan and Vanessa lived like royalty. They traveled to Italy, the Maldives, Dubai. Every photo screamed money, passion, power. Ethan looked happy, too happy, almost manic. Vanessa clung to him like a prize she'd finally won. People whispered about Grace, of course. Some pitied her. Others said she should have fought harder. A few even said Vanessa was an upgrade. But not everyone was fooled. Ethan's mother refused to meet Vanessa. She told reporters her son was being controlled by a woman who knows exactly what she's doing. Ethan cut her off after that interview. One night, while Ethan and Vanessa dined with investors at a 5-star restaurant, Vanessa leaned close to him and whispered softly, pretending concern. "I heard Grace has been talking to some of your former employees, the ones who left after the divorce." He frowned. "And why would she do that?" "She's bitter, Ethan. You embarrassed her. Maybe she's planning something. You should be careful who you trust." He believed her instantly. By the next morning, 3 senior staff members were fired without warning. People who had worked for him for over a decade. Vanessa smiled privately as she watched him sign their termination letters. She was isolating him piece by piece, and he didn't even see it. Ethan's world was slowly becoming her kingdom. She attended board meetings, gave opinions on decisions, replaced long-time assistants with people she handpicked. Everyone who questioned her disappeared quietly. She was no longer just the girlfriend. She was the queen. At home, Ethan thought he was in control. He didn't notice the small things: Vanessa changing passwords, moving funds, transferring shares under new names. He trusted her completely. She would stroke his ego every night, whispering things like, "You're not just powerful, Ethan. You're unstoppable." He loved it. It fed the hole inside him where his conscience used to live. Grace tried not to think about him anymore. But sometimes, late at night, she'd dream about the past. The laughter, the promises, the way he once held her like nothing else mattered. Then she'd wake up and remember he'd chosen someone else. One afternoon, while walking home from work, she saw a mother struggling to carry groceries and hold her child at the same time. Without thinking, Grace helped her. They started talking, and that's how Grace learned about the Haven, a small charity for widows and single mothers. The next week, she showed up to volunteer. At first, it hurt. The stories she heard from the women, abuse, abandonment, loss, they reminded her of her own pain. But helping them gave her purpose again. She began organizing food drives, fundraisers, and small events. People noticed her kindness, her calm strength. She started smiling again, even if it was a small smile. Meanwhile, Ethan's empire was thriving, or so he thought. She had him expanding too fast, investing recklessly. She encouraged it, telling him he was building a legacy. He called her his lucky charm. She wasn't lucky, she was patient. Vanessa had a past Ethan never bothered to check. Years before, she'd been involved with a fraudulent investment firm that collapsed after Ethan's company crushed one of their projects. Hundreds of people lost everything, and Vanessa's brother went to prison for it. Ethan never knew that name, never connected the dots. But Vanessa remembered. She promised herself she would destroy the man responsible for her family's ruin. And now, she was sleeping in his bed. Ethan's few remaining friends began to notice his behavior changing. He was paranoid, impulsive, crueler than before. He started drinking heavily, ignoring advice, and cutting off anyone who disagreed with Vanessa. He didn't see her smirking behind his back when he shouted at employees. He didn't see the look in her eyes when he called her the best thing that ever happened to me. Grace didn't know any of this. She just lived quietly, working, volunteering, trying to rebuild herself piece by piece. But one evening, while scrolling through the news on her phone, she saw a photo of Ethan and Vanessa attending a charity gala, ironically hosted by The Haven, the very organization she volunteered for. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. There they were, smiling under golden lights, Vanessa in a red dress that screamed confidence, Ethan whispering in her ear. The caption said, "Ethan Cole donates $2 million to support single mothers." Grace almost laughed. The irony was too cruel. That night she sat on her small balcony, holding her old wedding photo. It was the last thing she hadn't thrown away. She stared at the picture for a long time. She remembered the day it was taken, his promise that no matter how rich they became, they'd never let money come between them. She whispered softly, "You broke everything." Then she lit a match. The photo caught fire instantly, curling at the edges, their smiling faces twisting into black ash. She didn't cry this time. She watched the flame until it died, leaving only a small pile of ashes on the balcony floor. For the first time, she felt light. That same night, Ethan was across the city, drunk on success and champagne. Vanessa sat beside him, laughing as cameras flashed. She leaned in close and kissed him for the photographers. He looked proud, powerful, untouchable. But she wasn't kissing him out of love. She was kissing her revenge. The next morning, Ethan woke up to an empty bed. Vanessa was already on her laptop, pretending to work. She smiled at him and said she was just checking their investments. He didn't notice the documents she signed quietly under his name. When he asked her what she was doing, she smiled and said, "Making sure your empire lasts forever." He kissed her forehead and left for a meeting, thinking he had it all. Vanessa stared at the door for a long time after he left, her smile fading. Her reflection in the window looked colder, sharper. "Almost there," she whispered to herself. Grace, meanwhile, started finding small joys again. Sunlight through her window, laughter from the children at the shelter, the peace of helping others who had nothing to give back. She began to heal from the inside out. People at the charity started admiring her strength. Some called her an angel. She just smiled and said she was learning how to start over. One day, a woman asked if she had ever been married. Grace paused before answering. "Yes," she said quietly, "but I survived it." At the same time, Ethan's life was growing more hollow, though he couldn't see it yet. His laughter was louder but emptier, his circle smaller, his nights longer. Vanessa was always there, but not really there. She watched him, studied him, waited. The higher he climbed, the further he fell from reality. And Grace, the woman he threw away like nothing, was beginning to rise again. Quietly. Humbly. Beautifully. Ethan didn't know it yet. But the world was about to turn. because the downfall of the proud often begins the moment they believe they can't be deceived. And Ethan Cole was already halfway to his fall. The first crack came quietly. A missing payment, a confused accountant, a deal that fell apart without warning. Ethan brushed it off at first. He was too used to winning, too confident. He told himself it was just a minor setback, something his team could fix overnight. But one night turned into a week, and 1 week turned into a series of phone calls filled with excuses and apologies. Investors started pulling out. His once loyal partners suddenly stopped answering his calls. A rumor spread that his company was under investigation for financial irregularities. When Ethan asked Vanessa what was going on, she smiled sweetly and said, "People are jealous of your success. They'll do anything to see you fall." He believed her. He always did. Every time someone questioned her decisions, Vanessa blamed them for being disloyal. Every time Ethan got angry, she whispered that he was the only one strong enough to fix it. She fed his pride like poison, spoonful by spoonful, but things kept getting worse. A major construction project in Miami collapsed financially. Millions vanished. Ethan fired 2 managers, but it didn't stop the bleeding. The press caught wind of it, and soon his name was all over the news again. But not in praise this time. The same magazines that once called him America's golden billionaire now called him reckless, arrogant, unstable. Grace saw the headlines too. She read them quietly over her morning coffee in her small apartment, then folded the paper and went to work at the charity. She didn't smile, but she didn't gloat either. She'd learned not to celebrate another person's fall, even if that person had destroyed her. Still, deep inside, a small part of her felt that the universe was finally balancing itself. Her charity was growing. Donations were pouring in. Influential people had begun noticing her work. Some of them, ironically, were old associates of Ethan's who had once looked down on her. They respected Grace for her humility, her sincerity, her quiet strength. She didn't know that 2 of her new investors had personal reasons for helping her. Years ago, Ethan had betrayed them in a business deal. Now they wanted to see someone else rise from his shadow, and Grace became that someone. While Grace's life slowly found light, Ethan's world began to darken. The mansion that once felt like a palace now echoed with silence. Vanessa wasn't as affectionate as before. She spent hours locked in her study, pretending to work. When Ethan asked what she was doing, she smiled and said she was protecting their future. But she had started mocking him behind closed doors. She would roll her eyes when he talked about rebuilding. She laughed when he lost his temper. Once, during dinner, she looked at him and said softly, "You used to be powerful. What happened to that man?" He slammed his glass on the table so hard it cracked. "That man built this empire." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time you admit it's crumbling." He didn't notice the way she looked at her phone, smiling at messages that weren't from him. Vanessa had found someone new, a rival businessman named Marcus Hale. He'd always envied Ethan's success. Vanessa knew that, and she used it. She met him secretly at a hotel under a fake name. They talked about business at first, but soon it became something else. Marcus asked her once if she felt guilty. She laughed. "Ethan Cole doesn't deserve guilt. He deserves ruin." Back at home, Ethan started seeing shadows everywhere. Every phone call felt suspicious. Every employee felt like a traitor. He drank more, slept less. He called his lawyer one morning, shouting that someone was stealing from him. The lawyer told him not to worry. Everything was under control. But Ethan didn't believe anyone anymore. He started checking his own accounts. That's when he noticed it. Large sums moving in and out of company accounts, all authorized by his signature. But he didn't remember signing anything. He confronted Vanessa that night, pacing the floor while she poured herself a glass of wine. "What the hell is this?" he said, waving the printed documents. "Transfers I didn't approve, investments I never signed off on." She looked calm. You must have forgotten. You've been under stress. I don't forget signing off millions, Vanessa. She shrugged. Maybe you should be more organized. I can't keep track of everything you do. His voice rose. Don't lie to me. Her eyes went cold. Lie to you? You're the one who built an empire on lies. Maybe it's finally catching up to you. He froze. What did you just say? Nothing, she said with a smirk. Just that karma has a strange way of working. For the first time, Ethan felt a chill run through him when he looked at her. But before he could speak again, she walked away, her heels echoing on the marble floor. The next day, his bank called. His accounts were frozen. All of them. Personal, corporate, offshore, everything. The man on the phone spoke in a calm, robotic tone. Mr. Cole, we've received multiple legal orders regarding asset control and ownership disputes. Until further notice, your access is restricted. Ethan felt his stomach drop. He hung up and called his assistant, but the line was dead. He called his CFO, no answer. Every number he tried either disconnected or said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. By evening, the press was outside his mansion again. This time the headlines screamed scandal, not success. He stormed into Vanessa's office, his voice breaking with rage. What did you do? She didn't look up from her laptop. I did what I had to do. My accounts are frozen. My company's been stripped. You did this, didn't you? She finally looked up, her face unreadable. You took everything from me once. Now it's your turn. What are you talking about? You don't even remember, do you? Years ago, one of your companies crushed a small investment firm. Hundreds of people lost everything. One of them was my brother. He went to prison while you celebrated another deal. You ruined us. His mouth went dry. That firm... Greystone Capital? She smiled. Yes, I was Vanessa Gray back then. I changed my name after you destroyed my family. He stumbled back, shaking his head. This is insane. You can't... I already did. She stood up, walked past him, and stopped at the door. Everything you own is mine now. Every signature, every paper. You were too busy showing off to notice. I learned from the best. He shouted her name, but she didn't turn around. The door slammed behind her. That was the last time Ethan Cole saw Vanessa Blake. By morning, she was gone. Her phone was disconnected. Her social media accounts deleted. The security cameras at the mansion had been wiped clean. All that was left was a handwritten note on his desk. You took everything from me once. Now it's your turn. The words blurred as he read them again and again. He tore through the mansion like a madman, calling her name, throwing furniture, smashing glasses. When his reflection caught him in the mirror, he didn't recognize the man staring back. The reporters outside shouted questions he couldn't answer. The empire he'd built, the money he'd worshipped, the woman he'd chosen, it had all vanished in a single night. He fell to his knees on the marble floor, surrounded by silence. For the first time in his life, there was no one left to blame. Across the city, Grace finished her day at the charity. She smiled as a group of children ran up to hug her, their laughter echoing through the hall. She didn't know that somewhere, miles away, Ethan was sitting alone in the ruins of his own pride. She looked up at the sky that evening and whispered a small prayer, not for revenge, but for peace. Because she finally understood. The universe doesn't always rush, but it never forgets a debt. And Ethan Cole's time had just come due. The news hit the world like a thunderclap. Ethan Cole, the billionaire everyone once admired, was broke. His empire was gone, his accounts frozen, his companies under investigation. The same media that once called him a genius now called him a fraud, a fool, a fallen king. Paparazzi camped outside his mansion for days, waiting for a glimpse of him. They finally got their shot, A single photo of Ethan walking out in a wrinkled shirt, eyes hollow, beard unshaven. The man who once ruled skyscrapers now looking like a ghost. His phone wouldn't stop ringing at first. Investors, journalists, lawyers. But soon, the calls stopped. His friends stopped answering. His business partners disappeared. Even the staff he once bragged about fired themselves quietly, taking what little dignity they had left. By the end of the month, the mansion was empty. The cars were gone. The art, the jewelry, the furniture, all repossessed or auctioned. The gates that once opened for luxury cars now stood locked, creaking in the wind. And Vanessa was nowhere to be found. The FBI said she had fled the country under a fake identity. Some said she'd taken millions to a private island. Others whispered she was already dead. Ethan didn't care anymore. He just sat in silence, staring at his reflection, wondering when the man in the mirror became a stranger. Across the city, Grace sat in her small office at the charity, reading reports about an upcoming acquisition. The Haven, her organization, had just received an anonymous donation big enough to buy out a small real estate subsidiary that once belonged to Cole Group. The name caught her attention. Cole Urban Housing. It was one of Ethan's old projects, one he used to brag about at dinner tables. Now, it belonged to her charity. She closed her eyes and exhaled. It wasn't revenge, it was balance. Her life had changed in quiet, powerful ways. Her charity had expanded, opening new branches across 3 states. She had built something real, something that helped people who had no one else. People admired her not because she was rich, but because she was strong. She had become a symbol of hope, the woman who rose after being broken. One evening, while leaving a fundraising gala, a man stopped her by the door. He was tall, silver-haired, dressed in a dark suit that carried quiet authority. He smiled warmly. "Grace Cole." She looked up, confused. "Do I know you?" "Not personally," he said. "But I knew your husband. Or rather, the man he used to be." Her body tensed. "Ethan?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, my name is Daniel Warren. I was his business partner once, until he betrayed me." Grace didn't speak. She had heard stories about Daniel years ago, the man Ethan forced out of the company during a takeover deal. Daniel continued, "I lost everything because of him. But I rebuilt myself, quietly. I watched from the shadows while he rose and burned, and when I saw what he did to you, I decided to help." She frowned. "Help me." "I'm the silent investor behind the Haven," he said gently. "I believed in you. And when I saw how you led, with grace and compassion instead of greed, I knew you were meant to have what he lost." Grace felt tears welling up. "Why tell me this now?" "Because the time for hiding is over. The world should know who truly deserves the throne." That night, Grace stood on her balcony, looking out at the city lights. The same skyline Ethan once claimed as his kingdom. It no longer felt like his world. It felt like hers now. Meanwhile, Ethan was living in a rented apartment downtown, surviving on savings he'd hidden years ago. He stayed out of sight, avoiding cameras, drowning his guilt in whiskey. He'd spent nights scrolling through news articles, watching his own name burn. Every photo of Grace's smiling face made his chest ache. She was glowing, confident, calm, beautiful. He whispered to himself in the dark, "You won." One rainy evening, desperate and broken, Ethan made a decision. He needed to see her. He found the address of the Haven online and drove there in an old car that barely ran. When he arrived, the rain had stopped, and the charity's building stood tall and warm against the grey sky. Through the glass doors, he saw her standing in the hallway, surrounded by volunteers. She was laughing softly, her hair glowing under the lights. He hesitated. He didn't belong there. But he had come too far to turn back. When she finally noticed him, her smile faded slightly, but she didn't look angry, just surprised. They stood face to face for the first time in years. He looked thinner, older, the arrogance drained from his eyes. "Grace," he said quietly. She didn't respond, just waited. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. "I've lost everything." She nodded slowly. "I heard." He swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how I treated you. For not seeing your worth. For choosing her." Her voice was calm. "You didn't choose her, Ethan. You chose pride, and it chose your punishment." He looked down, tears filling his eyes. "I thought I was unstoppable. I thought love was weakness." "It never was," she said softly. "It was your strength. You just buried it under your ego." "I ruined you," he whispered. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You refined me." He looked up at her, broken and trembling. "How do you keep smiling after everything I did to you?" She took a deep breath. "Because I prayed for your success, Ethan. I just never knew it would destroy you first." The words hit him like a blade. She stepped closer, her voice steady but kind. "You taught me what love isn't. And for that, I'm grateful, because now I know what peace feels like." He tried to speak, but no words came. His voice cracked. "Is there any chance?" She stopped him with a gentle shake of her head. "No, Ethan. Some bridges burn for a reason." A black car pulled up outside. The photographers had found them. Flashlights burst through the glass as reporters shouted her name. Grace turned toward the door. The volunteers hurried to shield her as she walked outside, smiling for the cameras. The reporters shouted questions, but she stayed silent, graceful as ever. The headlines the next morning called her the woman who rose from ashes. They praised her strength, her beauty, her success. They wrote that her charity had recently partnered with a new conglomerate owned by Daniel Warren and Grace Cole, the same empire Ethan once ruled. Ethan saw it all on the news from his small apartment. He sat on the floor, the light from the screen reflecting off his empty eyes. The world loved Grace now. She was everything he threw away: loyalty, heart, truth. He stepped out onto the balcony, the city noise echoing below. In every car, every billboard, every magazine stand, her face shone. His empire, his name, his legacy, all gone. He had become a ghost, haunting his own past.